Hello my friends, my name is Lindsay, I run the blog Books for Christian Girls, and welcome back to the little corner of the internet where I talk mainly about Christian fiction. And in today's video, it's all Christian fiction, because we are going to be doing a list of books that I have been sharing about on other social media platforms, but I haven't shared about on this social media platform. And you know, I'm of the opinion that some people like Instagram, some people like TikTok, some like YouTube, and we all get and gather information from multiple different sources in today's world. So I want to put this list on here as well because it's a really good list if I say so myself. If this is your first time seeing me, hello, my name is Lindsay and I run the blog Books for Christian Girls. BFCG is a site dedicated to sharing very in-depth content reviews of Christian books for girls ages 9 to 19. And throughout my over 12 years of doing BFCG, I have been asked by multiple girls and teenagers and parents and families that are looking for romance books. And I say romance books because they want ones that are very innocent, very wholesome, appropriate for teenagers, and basically not what's super popular out there in the world today. They want books that are squeaky clean, that have good morals, and that is what this list is. This is a list of teen-safe, teen-appropriate romance books that are great for Christian teen girls. And I've got some on this list that are good for maybe the younger end of like 13, 14 plus, and then I've got some that probably would be better for 16 and plus, because a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old would probably want different types of content in their books and be interested in different storylines. But it really depends on the girl. It depends on the family's view of romance. So I have full content reviews of all of these books linked down below, so y'all can check that out. But I also will be linking in the description a Canva link, which is a fancy little slideshow, if I say so myself, that has about the book and like tropes that are in the series or in the book and maybe the aesthetics of that book. But if you click on the link to that cover, it will take you to the full content review. So I will try my best to have both of them linked below. So if you're just looking for one certain book that I talk about, that link, you can just easily go there. Or you want to check out the rest of these books and my handy dandy little slideshow, you can check out the Canva link. I think I will have enough room to link all of them. Hopefully YouTube won't limit my character restrictions. So with that, let's get started. I have a stack of books for this video and I'm so excited. So if you're like, Lindsay, your bookshelf's in disarray, it's because of this video, my dear friends. So we're going to start off with one that is kind of a classic in the Christian fiction world, if you will, especially for YA readers, and that's going to be the Christy Miller series by Robin Jones Gunn. I will give the little disclaimer on this series though that it does deal with some harder topics just even in this first volume, so it definitely is going to depend on the girl. I first read them when I was like 11, 12, very homeschooled 11, 12-year-old girl, and I will say some things went over my head and I didn't understand. When I read them again at 16 and then I think I was in my 20s, and now I read them last year, so I was about 25, and I understood a little bit more of what was happening. But so, just as a disclaimer, I think this would be a really good series for those that are going through public school, especially like entering in high school. I think this would have a lot of teen problems that teenagers face, but it handles it in a Christian way. So I have my full content review of this one obviously down below, and I'm still working on reviewing the rest of the series, but this one is reviewed, and this is where there's kind of the most teen problems and things that teenagers face in today's world. This series continues on and follows Christy all the way through high school to the college years to when she gets married and becomes a mom. I have not read the last two, like the married and baby years. I haven't read that series yet. I'm hoping to finally get this series reread and get all of those read as well. But there's multiple spin-off series and spin-off books, so it's like a series that can last you a good while, but it definitely is going to depend on the girl. I think it's a classic for Christian teen girls, but it definitely depends on the girl and her family's viewpoints on different things. Shall we stack our books over here? I think we're going to do that. My next one is one that I'm sure if you have seen any of my videos, you already saw coming, because I talk about this series a lot, and that is Christa McGee's contemporary trilogy. She has a dystopian trilogy that is also really good, but this series would be the one I would maybe recommend even a little bit more for if you want like a romance-centered or just like a book that has a cute romance in it. So this is technically a trilogy. even though it does not really say that anywhere. So the best order to read them in is First Date, Starring Me, and Right Where I Belong. And they follow 3 different girls. It is only told in their perspectives, but First Date is kind of like Esther meets The Bachelorette, but appropriate and like teen safe. And it's very interesting because Addie is a very smart, brainiac kind of girl, and she gets entered into this competition to win a date with the president's son, and she's just like, she doesn't care. She needs to study. She's trying to get to college, all that kind of stuff. But there ends up to be a little bit of a surprise on the horizon for her, and it's really good. Book 2 follows Cara, who was also a part of that TV show, and she really wants to make it as an actress and do comedy and all that kind of thing. So this is kind of like a teen Saturday Night Live, if you will, but appropriate again, and it has a lot of humor. And what's really neat about this book is you actually, rather than just hearing like, oh, the audience loved our new skit, it actually has the skit written out. And I just thought it was so fun. I laugh every time I read this book. It's very enjoyable. Okay, I think I just told y'all that it's only in the main girl's POV. That's not correct. I'm so sorry. You do get the guy's POV a few times. Not a lot. It's mainly the girl's POV, but you do get the guy's POV as well. And then we also have the 3rd book, which is Right Where I Belong. And it is about Natalia, who ends up moving from Spain to Florida to be with the best stepmom she's ever had when her father announces yet another divorce. And Natalia has such a hunger to learn about God and read the Bible, and so she gets to go to a Christian school, and the pastor's son there is an absolute sweetheart. So, fantastic series. The Trade Winds series by Taylor Bennett is 4 books and a novella, so I'll put all of them on screen. But this follows Olive, and shortly after her mom passes away, her dad gathers Olive and then her younger sister to go take them to their mom's mom in Hawaii, and kind of just leaves them there in the midst of his grief and their grief, and Olive is not happy about it and is trying to do whatever she can to get back to the mainland before her dad makes any decisions about their home or their mom's stuff or anything like that. And so it does have ties of grief, but we also get such good character development from Olive throughout this series. And particularly, I really like the 2nd book because of that, and just the faith content that's added in and the sweet romance that goes throughout the whole series. Olive and the main guy, they end up dating with intention, and that's kind of all I want to say, because I don't want to spoiler the rest of the series, but it's very good. I've greatly enjoyed this series. Very good, especially for fans of the Christy Miller series. I would say maybe it's not quite teen problem facing, but Olive does definitely face some different problems and has perspective changes and has to have some really good character growth for this book. And the series, really. And then I want to give 2 bonus recommendations of 2 standalone books that if you really like those series, you'll probably really like these books. And the first one is Victoria Grace the Jerkface by S.E. Clancy. This is a YA contemporary book about Victoria Grace, and not only is there a new handsome student in her class, there is also a history project where she has to go to a nursing home and interview this one lady and learn her story. And there's a lot of those elements. There's also a lot of humor and some sarcasm. And I think one way to kind of give y'all a good little clue of the humor of this book is the blurbs on the back, like, of other people, like, talking about the book, you know. One is from the author's mom, and it says, "I think it's okay." And then the author's dad says, "Usually I prefer murder mysteries." And I thought that was very humorous, and it gives you a good nod to the humor in this book. It's very humorous. It's a standalone book. It was quite fun. My other recommendation would be Hey Jude Carpenter by Storm Stultz. This is a YA contemporary romance which follows Jude and Mona. They are about 14 years old, and the ending is what made this book even better to me, the epilogue. I love the epilogue, but I'm getting ahead of myself. This is about Jude and Mona though, and they both live in a very rural small town, and they become friends kind of accidentally, and when they start to hang out more and they introduced each other to their parents, problems arise because they're kind of feuding families, if you will, and they have to figure out all of that. And there's some faith content in this book and discussions with pastors about past hurts and different things like that, that I thought this was a really fun, entertaining book, but I will say the epilogue was my favorite part. So all of those books were contemporary, and now I have a couple historical YA books I thought we would mention. And so the first one would be The Lady of Lenaria by Michaela Bush. This is book 1 of 6 in the Legends of Lenaria series. Book 6 is releasing in November, and I am super excited for it. The later books in the series don't all have romance, and some of them deal with some harder topics, so maybe just check out my reviews to make sure they would be okay. But I highly recommend this first book especially. It is a Rapunzel retelling, my very favorite Rapunzel retelling, I think it would be fair to say. And I've read a lot of fairy tale retellings, but this one is just particularly special because of the super strong faith content, and I just love our Rapunzel main character. And then also our Flynn Rider character, if you will, is kind of like Flynn, but instead of being a thief, picture him as an upstanding, moral citizen, that so much so that he's a knight. Yes, that is Gabe, and they are just absolutely precious, so sweet together, and this series really launches off into a fight versus good versus evil, and there's a lot of things happening in the background of this book that gets expanded upon for the rest of the series. It's been a really good series, but I would give like some content warnings for a couple of them, so maybe for older teen girls, but this one was very, very enjoyable. Another series that is currently still being published is the one by Victoria Lynn, and you've probably heard about these if you were on Bookstagram, on the Christian side of Bookstagram, because they are very good, very popular. This is book 1 and 2. Book 1 is Once I Knew, and book 2 is This Life of Mine. Book 1 is Once I Knew, and it follows Violet, who is a girl living in a very quiet village trying to stay under the radar from everyone when she finds an injured kingsman or a knight in her area, and she has to help him even though she really kind of doesn't want to. And that knight has like an amnesia kind of thing happening there, and he doesn't know who he is, and there's all kinds of different elements with that. Then we have book 2, which is This Life of Mine, which follows Violet, the main girl from book 1, one of her dear childhood friends, and his story, and then his love interest. And this one has some harder topics, so I would say like 17 plus personally for this one, because it does have references and mentions to like human trafficking and a forced abortion. And our main girl of this book has been through a lot, but it is the faith content that just stands out so much to me in this series. There is actually a third book as well, but there's not really any romance in The Lost Rose, but this one's really good. I definitely recommend reading them in order. Definitely recommend reading them in order. Once I Knew can be read at a younger age, but This Life of Mine might be a harder one for some readers, so I have content review details, of course. Going back to contemporary for a minute, we're going to talk about an all-time favorite author of mine because her books are so good, and that would be Erin Mangum. Hello and welcome to my fangirl moment. So Erin Mangum is one of my all-time favorite authors because she does have one YA book, and that's Sketchy Behavior. Love that one. I've talked about it on my channel since the beginning of my channel basically, but her books elsewise besides that one are contemporary, kind of, I guess you would say new age, but they're new adult in the sense they don't have questionable content. They just follow characters that are usually in their 20s or even their 30s. And it's very kind of slice of life. Like, it's just following the main girls and their lives and reading their Bible, going to church, their jobs, a potential love interest, their friend group. Like, it's just fun and humorous, super strong faith content and friendships, and just so many parts that I just absolutely adore. I don't think you can go wrong with any of her books, and she has quite a few of them available on Kindle Unlimited if you have that subscription. Her newest one, though, is A Leap Day in the Square. It just released earlier this year. Book 2 will be coming out hopefully by the end of this year. It sounds like it's coming soon, and I'm so excited for it. In Leap Day in the Square, we follow Lucy, who has 2 goals in life. One of them is to have a cotton candy truck just in time for her town's Leap Day in the Square celebration. And then she also wants to avoid Ben from high school. that's not going to go as you plan at all. And so we have that big message of forgiveness in this book, but then also just a lot of Bible studies going and praying and so much strong faith content, but also a lot of humor as well. And then in one of her standalone books, we have Mind the Gap. And this is about Kate, who goes to London with her grandma when her dream job doesn't work out. And they have a very cute British tour guide, and they have great faith content and discussions, and it's just amazing. There is also 2 novella collections. We Are Gathered here is just like, you know, normal time period, contemporary setting, but then Hear Them Ring is a Christmas one, so if you're in the mood for Christmas books, there you go. There is also the Paige Adler series, which is harder to find currently. I have hopes that the author will be republishing them at some point, and then I will be sharing about those even more. I would say that's probably my favorite series by her, but there is also the Lauren Holbrook series and the Maya Davis series, and they're really enjoyable. Another series, though, that I have just started to reread is the Carrington Springs series. And so that's Katie in Waiting, Once Upon Eliza, and Happily Ever Ashton. This series is particularly, I think, different than any other books on this list because it doesn't end with a romance. It has a hopeful potential romance, but it does not end with I love you and the wedding bells and whatnot. It is a learning to be content no matter how you are in life, no matter who you're with in life, and learning that you have to trust the Lord in everything, but particularly in the idea of relationships and marriage and everything. And I really, really love and appreciate that series for this message. It gives a very realistic, I think you could say, view, and we follow Katie, Eliza, and Ashton, and they are all in their early 30s, just going through life and going to church and hanging out with each other, and then some potential love interests appear. But it does not end like a general sense romance book. So I really like this series. I think it's very different. I think it is very unique. And it's also very, very good in my opinion. Switching gears to kind of like a mystery suspense category, I guess you could say. I have one of each, so it's not really a category, I suppose. But I'm putting them together. And so that first series would be the Gone to the Dogs mystery series, and it's by Janice Thompson and Kathleen Yabarbo. But particularly this first book and the 5th book, which is Every Dog Has His Day, and Off the Chain is book 1. I would say these would be my favorite because of the very sweet romances and just how natural it felt for the couples. In this first book, we follow Marigold, and she is a vet tech at this veterinary clinic, and her love interest is her really, really good friend, and it just has... He's just a good guy. Overall, he's just a really good guy. They have been friends for a while, and things lead into more. And I just thought it was very natural and very cute. In book 5, we see another really cute couple, but we also see Marigold and her fella again, which made me so happy. For a suspense series, I talk about this one a lot too, so this is probably no surprise, but that would be the Poor Astra Secrets Trilogy by Sandra Orchard. And what particularly stands out to me about this series, so book 1 is Deadly Devotion, book 2 Blind Trust, and book 3 Desperate Measures, is this whole trilogy, about 900 pages in total. We follow the same main girl, Kate, and she is trying to find out what really happened to her mentor. They are both scientists, and they've been working for a cure to depression, but her mentor suddenly dies, and it's being ruled as a suicide, and Kate does not think that is so. So she ends up getting involved with the police chief, or the detective, who is a former FBI agent, Tom, and their progression of how they fell for each other felt so natural, and they had good faith conversations, and there was good content. I also enjoyed the humor that was sprinkled in throughout this book, but I also just really like the suspense, and how if you have the first book, you are most likely definitely going to want the second book right away. In the same case, for as soon as you finish the second book, you're going to want the third book right away, because it does end on cliffhangers. They are very connecting. I definitely recommend reading them in order. They are just really, really enjoyable. My favorite suspense series, actually. My last section of this video is going to be about historical fiction, and there's a lot of historical Christian fiction books out there, but not all of them are safe or suitable for teen readers because of content they discuss. I have pulled a list of books that I think are suitable, and of course I've got full content reviews for you to check out, but most of these would be totally fine for 15 and up. So my first book for the historical fiction list would be A Lady's Guide to Marvels and Misadventure by Angela Bell. This is set in 1860, and it's not really your typical historical fiction because it has such a whimsical charm to it, and there's also a little bit of steampunk influences as well, which gives this book such a different storytelling style. I don't know, it's different. It's so enjoyable. I actually read it last year when it released, but then last month I listened to the audiobook with my mom, and she greatly enjoyed it as well. In this book, we follow Clara Stanton, and she's pretty stressed. She has a lot of different things happening, and then her grandfather does not make it easier on her when he hires for his clock workshop an apprentice that really seems suspicious. Arthur, he seems very suspicious. He doesn't say his last name. He doesn't really say where he's been, where he's from, anything like that. And because her ex-fiance has sent spies into their household to basically prove that her family is insane and kind of ruin their reputation in a lot of different ways, she is very much on guard. But then her grandfather runs off in his flying machine, which is that steampunk influence that I was talking about earlier that's in this book. And so he runs off in that and basically leads her on a scavenger hunt. So it is up to Clara, Arthur, and her mom to go find the grandfather, and it's just their adventures. It's got the Nutcracker kind of feel to it, even though it's set in the spring. It also kind of has Around the World in 80 Days, that kind of vibe as well, because of all their travels. And it is just such a good book. The romance, because Clara is very suspicious of Arthur at the beginning and like for a good amount of the book, but then it gradually becomes to acceptance, to friends, to more. And I really greatly enjoyed seeing that progression of it. The audiobook is fantastic if you are an audiobook fan. And then let's see, the faith content, oh, so good. The faith content's so good. There's humor, there's wit, it's just, their banter back and forth. There is one quote I always share when I talk about this book, and it is the quote up on screen, because I just squeal and squeal and just fangirl over that quote because it's so sweet, and it gives you a really good idea of just how sweet and wholesome the book is. I really enjoyed this book. It is a standalone. It is one I highly recommend. A completed trilogy that was quite fun is the Matchmakers Trilogy by Jen Turano. I have read all of her books, and I don't know if this was my favorite series, but I did greatly enjoy them, so it might be. I'd have to reread some of her older ones. Her books are just really fun, but this series particularly I think would be fun for teen girls. And so book one is A Match in the Making, and we follow Gwendolyn, who unexpectedly becomes a matchmaker's assistant, but then has to take on the matchmaker's job when the head matchmaker breaks her leg. And so the client is this kind of grumpy man who has two or three, I can't remember if he has 2 or 3 children, but they multiply though. They feel like they multiply. They're very mischievous. And so she is trying to find him a match, but you also have the children helping as well, and it was quite fun and humorous. Then we have To Spark a Match, which we follow Adelaide, I think is how we say her name, and she is kind of a confirmed Spencer Catwoman, but she ends up getting involved with a spy and his undercover mission. This was probably my favorite of the series. And then book 3 is Meeting Her Match, and we follow Camilla, and she is a renowned matchmaker, but after an attempted kidnapping of herself, she ends up kind of going off and just trying to lay under the radar, but she ends up meeting a gentleman who has a sister who needs to be match made. And so of course things lead to more things, and it was very cute. This whole series is very humorous. Definitely if you just want like a fun, maybe on the fluffy side, but just enjoyable. This might be more of a bonus series because there's not a lot of Christian faith content compared to all the other books I've mentioned, but it does have Christian influences and just a lot of humor. So it's kind of a bonus recommendation, really, for this list. My next book is The Uncertainty of Fire by Stephanie Daniels, and this follows 17-year-old Whimsy, and it is actually set during the Chicago fire. And all the things that happen with that and how it's affected Whimsy. This book actually follows a year of her life, and what else can I want to be vague because of spoilers. It follows a year in her life. There is a love triangle, but there is a lot of really good character growth for Whimsy and lessons she has to learn and strong faith content and just so many different elements of it. There is sadness because of the Chicago fire and such elements that have to do with that. I think that's all I'm going to tell you about this book. I really greatly enjoyed it though. I'm highly looking forward to book 2, but this one particularly, I loved seeing Whimsy's growth, not only in her character but in her faith, and the witnessing that happened as well was very good. So I want to tell you more about this one, but I don't feel like I can, because it covers a year in her life, and I don't want to give spoilers. But it's very good. Another author I have talked about for quite a bit on my channel would be Carrie Taransky, and particularly I would recommend these 3 books by her. But the first one would be The Governness of Highland Hall. This was my very first one I read by her, and it follows Julia in an Edwardian time period, so that's like around 1910-ish. And her family were missionaries to India, but because of her father's health not being great, they have moved back to England, and Julia has to get a job. And so she gets a job as a governess at Highland Hall. And Julia just has such a Christ-like sweetness about her. She is such a sweet, sweet character, and how she just loves everyone, even the difficult people, with the love of the Lord. It's just truly like, I want to be like Julia, if that makes sense, because she is just such a sweetheart, and how she witnesses to others and how she treats others, her prayers, just so many different elements of that one. I really like this one. I just reread this one earlier this year, and I'm hoping I can reread books 2 and 3 before the end of the year, so I've got to get on that. Across the Blue and Shine Like the Dawn are 2 other ones I remember greatly enjoying by Carrie Taransky. They are standalone historical fiction books. I remember them having really good, strong faith content. There is also 2 dual time period books by this author, The Legacy of Longdale Manor and A Token of Love. I would say I think I liked A Legacy of Longdale Manor more, but they also had very strong faith content. I don't think I've read all the books by this author, so I can't recommend all of her books just as a blanket statement, but the ones I have read I have really enjoyed, so it would be her historical ones. I don't know if I've read any of her contemporary books, actually, now that I think of it. Another 3 books by one author that I greatly enjoyed would be The Librarian of Boons Hollow by Kim Vogel-Sawyer, plus the sequel Return to Boons Hollow. This is set in like the Great Depression era, and it is about horseback traveling librarians in this small town in Kentucky. And I just love, love, love the faith content, how the main guy encourages the main girl, and just so many different elements of it. If you want to hear me just like fangirl and rave and just sigh and loveliness over this book, I actually have a 20-minute video where I do just that, because it is just so precious. And then we also have such strong faith content and conversations and discussions. It is really just so inspiring and beautiful to see, especially with our main girl having to deal with one of the other girls in town that is not the easiest to love, but that girl gets her own story in the sequel, and we see a little bit more on why she is the way she is. It does have to do with like an abusive father though, so heads up on that and like implications of that. So I have that in my content review, but it is one of my favorite books of all time. And then Kim Vogel-Sawyer, her newest book that came out is Hope's Enduring Echo, and this one I greatly enjoyed. It actually felt a lot like a historical YA book, because our main girl is only about 17, and she has such a strong relationship with her mother, and I loved seeing that. But there also is just a sweet friendship between her and the main guy that was just so precious to see, really, and how it eventually led into more. But he was just such an encourager to her, and just keeping her in his prayers and praying with her and encouraging her in her faith. I love it when a male main lead does that in a Christian fiction book. It is just absolutely so heartwarming, so precious, and just honestly kind of swoon worthy, because he is being that spiritual leader, and I just love seeing that. And he was just overall a really good friend to her first, and then it eventually led into more. But you also have the sweet mother-daughter relationship between our main girl Jenny and her mom, and we get the mom's perspective, and there's just a lot of different elements of this book that is just so precious to read about. This book is part of a series, but I have not read book 3 yet, so I'm not gonna like give a broad recommendation, but this first book I really enjoyed and would recommend, and that was The Heart's Choice by Tracy Peterson and Kimberly Woodhouse. This follows our main girl Rebecca, and she, as a young girl, witnessed someone be convicted of a crime that was actually innocent, and that has kind of set her life into motion of being a courtroom reporter. And so she becomes the very first courtroom reporter, that's a tongue twister, in the state of Wyoming. And then we have our main guy, who is a librarian, and he's very bookish and quiet, but very sweet. And the faith content in their discussions was just so precious to read about. I greatly enjoyed this one. Book 2 was good, but book 1 is better in my opinion, and I haven't read book 3 yet, so I don't know about that one. And then my final recommendation for this video would be The Secrets of the Canyon Trilogy by Kimberly Woodhouse. I'll tell you the whole ones, but I particularly want to recommend the first book specifically. And so book 1 is A Deep Divide, book 2 A Gem of Truth, and book 3 A Mark of Grace. This whole trilogy has very strong faith content, and I was very pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoyed it. It follows 3 different girls that are working as Harvey girls around the Grand Canyon, and I think it was the early 1900s? The early 1900s, and so it was fascinating to not only have that historical element, but you also have their faith growth and the witnessing of others to the main characters. This whole series is really good, and the male leads in it are just absolute sweethearts and so strong in their own faiths and able to encourage the main girls and just be a prayer partner for them. But in the first book particularly, I really truly loved seeing in A Deep Divide, the main guy Ray, he particularly prays about pursuing the main girl. And I just loved seeing that intent behind his prayers, and not only just keeping her in his prayers, but also praying about potentially having a relationship with her. I thought that was just such a sweet and wholesome element of this book, and the whole series was very good. It had a little bit of suspense and a couple moments, but it's just a very solid, good historical Christian fiction in my opinion. And there we go. Those are 3 stacks of Christian fiction books that are teen safe, teen appropriate for teen readers, that are technically romance books, but have more than just romance to them. They have strong Christian faith content, they've got lessons learned, character growth, good godly couples and morals and all of that I just love so much. These are a bunch of my favorite books because of that, and I'm so excited to share these with y'all. I hope if you pick up any of them, maybe 1, 2, 10, 20, however many you pick up, I hope you enjoy them. I hope they become new favorites for you, and I hope you check out other ones as well on this list. I think that's it. I think I've talked y'all's ear off. I hope this video was helpful. I would love to know if you've read any of these, or do you want to read any of them? Did any of them catch your eye? If you've been on my channel for any amount of time, you probably know about a lot of these, but I had great fun talking about them, so I hope you enjoyed hearing about them, potentially again. That's it for this video though. I hope you enjoyed it. I will see y'all next time. I am Lindsay from the blog booksforchristiangirls.blogspot.com, where there is a new review every Wednesday and Friday. I try to post a new video on this channel every Friday as well. I'm also on Instagram under Books for Christian Girls, where I only talk about Christian fiction usually there. I say usually. Sometimes there's nonfiction, but that's rare. Usually it's fiction for girls ages 9 to 19. And then I have my personal bookstagram, which is Book Reviews by Lindsay, where I talk about Christian fiction and clean fiction. And I mean squeaky clean fiction. So I hope you enjoyed all of these books. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see y'all next time. I am also on TikTok and Goodreads and Facebook, and I think that's it. So I will see y'all here, there, and everywhere. I hope you have an absolutely lovely rest of your day, y'all. Bye!